do you think that there's something to ruminating, to going back and being like, okay, what are you avoiding here? Maybe that hard thing is actually listening to yourself, getting in touch with how you're actually feeling about this. Maybe there's something there that can put you, I guess, really set you up on a better path.
Absolutely. I think that we always call it reviewing game tape, which is actually ironic because I don't watch sports at all, but when we use that term with our clients, because I think if you fail to reflect, you're going to fail to honestly build wisdom, which wisdom is knowledge and experience together, really, right? You can't create wisdom if you don't reflect on the experiences and the situations you've gone through and then try to pull lessons out of it. So like a really quick, easy way to do this too is, a journaling practice. Um, we call it positive focus, but what happened? Why is it positive? As hard as that can be sometimes. What's the lesson you learn? And how do you apply this lesson somewhere else in your life? What, why, how, apply. Like it's really simple, right? And when you do that, you can start to get in a car accident and then find a positive and then apply that positive to your fitness or your nutrition or your relationships or whatever. Because that's like, why not create something good out of it? But again, this only happens from reflection. And I can also relate with, I think this is a pressure that comes with coaching. It's just kind of par for the course. But you end up, uh, I mean, maybe not everybody does this, but I know I have like isolated myself because I gotta, as you said too, put my shit aside because people need me to help them, right? But eventually you realize, number one, I can't keep helping people if I keep pushing my shit aside. And then also too, if I don't handle this, how do I get better at helping them handle theirs? You know? And I think that's ultimately and I don't want to, I won't say I'm necessarily going to give you pushback on the, like everything happens for a reason, but at a certain point you can stop and go, okay, well, I read this quote that says like, you've been praying for strength. So don't get upset when God gives you something to be strong for. And so if you really think about that, it's like, well, yeah, like what do you want? Who do you want to be? Right. The type of, like, how do you want to identify yourself as a person? What do you want people to say when you're not around? If somebody new comes into the circle and they're like, hey, what is so-and-so like? What do you want them to say about you to describe the type of person you are? Because all of those things I can guarantee require choosing hard or going through something difficult and challenging in order to accomplish and develop, right? I want to be disciplined. Okay. Well, you don't create discipline by doing easy things that you feel like doing, right? I want to be somebody who has a lot of self control. Okay. Well, you don't get self control unless you put yourself around temptations that you got to avoid, right? Like the list goes on. Every single one of them is something that you're going to have to go through something hard in order to develop the trait so that you can have that characteristic and identify that way.
Yeah, no, I think you hit that right on the head. And I would say what I'm hearing is very much like you have to seek that out and create it even artificially if it's not at the frequency in which you need it. I mean, like, obviously, being a parent, having your child be sick, having the frequent occurrences that, frankly, are just out of your control as far as like the volume and magnitude. I can understand like how that could make someone feel very helpless. And that in itself might be enough stress and pressure to force resilience, forced, I guess, robust adaptations. But in those slower periods of life, or even periods that are not the equivalent in the degree of stress, you almost have to seek that out. And maybe that is in daily practices, which I guess it's really where I want to take it. Like, on a daily basis. I mean, like, let's get granular. Like, what are the things that you yourself or you found like with your coaches, with clients, that you're like, these are the practices. I want you to seek this out. I want you to find this. And over time, it might seem like really like silly. It might seem like this isn't going to move the needle. What are those actions that lead someone, really to that path to become more robust?
Yeah, I got a few really good examples for this actually. So, and I want to preface this all too with it's not always like choose hard can seem very hardcore and extreme. And so I always want to talk to people on a level of very just normal, right? Average. So like even with the thing that my daughter went through, like I'll never forget this. This is an example of choosing hard in the moment was actually being very calm and like trying to bring down a situation because choosing hard sometimes is just doing what doesn't feel natural, right? So before my daughter had surgery, she would basically hold her pee because she was afraid it would hurt. And so her bladder stretched out. So she would like hold it and she would have way too much pee ready to go for this little girl. And I'll never forget, my wife called me one time. She was at Home Depot with her dad and my daughter, and I was in the office, and she was like, "Blakely won't pee. She's crying. I don't know what to do." And my wife is having anxiety clearly. So I leave the gym and office, and I drive home to meet him there and everything. And everybody's freaking out. My daughter's crying, and I was like, "Hey, just let me go in the bathroom with her." So I take my daughter to the bathroom. I laid a towel on the ground, and I put her on my lap and just sat on there and started rubbing her back and talking to her. Just started talking to her about stuff, trying to be really calm. Inside, I was freaking out. I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, she's 3. I'm not a pro dad yet. Like, I don't know what to do. And after a couple minutes, she just let it go. And I just let her pee all over me and the floor and the towel. And it was like the biggest relief. But it was almost like kind of like a horse, you got to stay calm and then they match your energy and stuff like that. And in that moment, that was really hard for me because I'm a very fast paced, loud, like, that was not the easy thing, you know? Another example for everyday people. When I get done with work and it's 5, 6 p.m., I'm tired. I've already trained. I'm training for high now. I might have done 2 workouts today. I've all day been talking, coaching, podcasting, all this stuff. And I open the door and I got a bulldog that's ready to go. And my daughter sprints around the corner and she's like, "What's up, dad?" And she wants to play. In that moment, being like enthusiastic and funny and playing is actually really hard, And some people will look at that and it sounds like you're being a dick, but everybody who could put themselves in that position understands it's not always easy for me to be excited to be Ken in the Barbie dream house. But in that moment, what do I want more? Comfort, or do I want her to remember her dad always wanted to play? I want that. You know what I mean? And same thing with my big chubby bulldog. I want him to feel the same way. So that's what I do. That's me choosing hard. Yesterday choosing hard was driving into the gym at 5:40 a.m. because I had to do my cardio. Because if I don't do it then, I know I'm not like, and this is a perfect example too. It's easier for me to choose hard then than it is to choose hard to add the cardio at the end of my leg day. So I can think ahead and go, okay, which hard choice is going to be easier to make? I'm going to choose hard right now, and I'm going to just go to the gym now and do my running, and then I'm going to come back home, and then I'm going to drive back there for work, right? But that's choosing hard. Choosing hard can be being enthusiastic. It can be just doing the things that you're supposed to do. Like there's so many things like this morning, I was literally walking out to the truck and the garbage man came a little early. So the garbage was already empty and I have a long driveway. I just wanted to go, but I grabbed the garbage can and I walked my ass all the way down the driveway so my wife didn't have to. That's choosing hard for me. And I think, you asked the question of how can people be better at this stuff. So there's a few things in here. First, choose hard in small ways because the more often you choose hard, the easier it gets. Obviously, repetition. Another thing is that self belief only happens and is only created if you have proof, and that's what the whole point of game tape is. I've talked to female clients about this a lot too, where they're struggling and they're like, "I don't know if I have the discipline that it takes to lose weight and stuff." And I'm like, "How many kids do you have?" Or like, you have a master's degree in what? And I can just talk to them about some life situations. And I'm like, trust me, you have the discipline and the control and everything you need to accomplish this goal. You just have to take that trait and learn how to apply it to this other area, which I can show you how to do. And a lot of people assume that fitness discipline is fitness discipline. No, no, no. Discipline is discipline. Channeling it can be difficult, but like once you realize you can, it's a lot easier because you have that belief. And now we can just look at game tape, look back and reflect and think, what is the proof that I have that I can do this? One of the factors for self belief is follow through. It's also the factor for other people believing in you. One time my wife had trouble believing in me because I would just say yes to everything. Hey, do you mind doing the dishes? Or hey, can you take this? Or do you mind calling this person? And they're not serious things. If I don't do it today, I do it tomorrow. It's not a big deal. But because I said yes and then I didn't do it, I'm not following through. And now she doesn't have that same faith in me. What makes anybody think that if they don't follow through with the little things they said that they would do, that they're going to have faith in themselves? They're going to have self belief. You won't.
I think within that, I mean, like being very adamant about finishing those thoughts, as far as like even like the the garbage can, and like understanding is like, hey, like there is a conscious alternative to this. And it might seem like, oh no, like, well, your wife can get it. It's like, yeah, but if she's on the fringe of like, you know what, this is like the fourth time I've done this week, or if she's like, you know what, like this is your thing, I always take care of these household chores, it's like, it might not seem like a big thing, it might seem very small, and it's like you're diverting like potentially something that could turn into something bigger, whether it's this one time or whether it's 100 times from now of you saying, no, like I gotta run, like I'll just leave it. You're making it to where, okay, this is null, that won't happen. And I think there's a lot of power in being able to have agency over outcomes. And I think you do that by being conscious and deliberate around why you do what you do. And I recorded an episode on this yesterday, around like, if you, like, I think it's very common in like fitness culture to explain, to justify, to caption, really like verbalize why you do what you do with your diet, with your training, to those around you, whether they're actually like invested or even care, or if it was prompted. And I think we do a really good job of like, oh, like I'm cutting carbs, so I'm like only getting half serving of rice at Chipotle, or I'm getting no rice, or I've got a little bit of cardio, so I'm going to head back to the gym. Like, I think where people go wrong is when they do the opposite of what they agreed to do initially. So when they practice, unconsciously, a little bit of that cognitive dissonance, but then are only giving those rationalizations when they're going against the grain. So never following up with like you to you, like, hey, why are you tracking your macros after your first meal? Why are you going to the store before you get home? It's because there is an outcome. Like, you're choosing essentially, okay, I can figure this problem out now. I can find the solution, and I can give myself lateral mobility, or I can let inhibitions, let just impulse dictate where this goes. I can put off that decision making. And I think when it comes to, choosing A versus B, um, I think it was my boyfriend who was talking about this on his podcast around like sacrifices only actually occur if the thing that was the alternative, if the opportunity cost was favorable. And when you look at something that you're like, okay, well, do I want to do this little thing, this little task, or do I potentially want my wife to feel unappreciated, or like I expect her to do a lot of household chores for X, Y, and Z? It's like that alternative is never favorable. Like in the case of like diet, it's like, do I want to be on plan or be off plan? Being off plan goes against, what you set out to do to begin with, even though it can give you that, momentary, release and dopamine. It's like, that's not what you actually want to do. You just want to alleviate the discomfort. And I think when you can start to reframe that and really consider, like, is this actually a sacrifice, or is this just an extension of the goal that I set out to do initially?